I clutched the cold, hard evidence in my hand, the phone with the damning picture, the receipts that felt like paper cuts to my soul, and waited. The hours crawled by, each tick of the clock on the mantelpiece a small hammer chipping away at my composure. I didn't cry anymore. A strange, unnerving calm had settled over me, the kind that precedes a hurricane. The baby was quiet too, as if sensing the storm brewing within his mother. I sat on the edge of our marital bed, a place that now felt desecrated, and rehearsed what I would say. I swung between wanting to scream until my throat was raw and wanting to say nothing at all, to just let the silence and the evidence speak for itself. When Mark's key finally turned in the lock around 2 a.m., the sound was unnaturally loud in the silent house. He walked in humming, smelling faintly of that expensive cologne and the crisp night air. He saw me sitting on the bed and his smile was instantaneous, practiced. "Hey, you're still up," he said, his voice light. "Sorry I'm so late, the Henderson project is a real killer." The lie was so effortless, so smooth, it almost made me doubt my own sanity. For a split second I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the laptop, the messages, the receipts, were all part of some elaborate, cruel hallucination. But the weight of my phone in my hand was real. I said nothing. I just looked at him, letting my eyes trace the lines of the face I once thought I knew better than my own. I saw the slight flush on his cheeks, the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hand as he loosened his tie. He wasn't coming from work. He was coming from her. His smile faltered under my silent scrutiny. "Sarah? Is everything okay? You look pale." He took a step closer, his hand reaching for me. "Is it the baby?" That was the trigger. The false concern for our son, the child he was so casually betraying. The hurricane inside me broke. "Don't," I said, my voice low and shaking with a fury I didn't know I possessed. "Don't you dare ask about this baby." I stood up, my body feeling heavy and cumbersome. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the picture of him and Chloe, their smiling faces a grotesque parody of happiness. "Who is she, Mark?" The color drained from his face. For a moment he looked genuinely stunned, caught. His eyes darted from the phone back to my face, a fish gasping for air on dry land. Then almost immediately the shutters came down. The shock was replaced by a defensive anger. "What is that? Have you been going through my things?" "My laptop." "You left it open," I said, my voice rising. "In the nursery. Our son's nursery. You left the evidence of your affair open in our baby's room." The absurdity, the sheer disrespect of it fueled my rage. "Who is she?" I demanded again, stepping closer. "She looks like she's still in high school." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. Now it just looked deceitful. "Look, Sarah, it's not what you think." The classic pathetic line of every cheater caught in the act. "It's not what I think?" I laughed, a harsh, broken sound that echoed in the tense silence. "Then what is it, Mark? Tell me. Explain the picture. Explain the messages where you tell her you love her. Explain the necklace you bought her while I was at home picking out paint colors for the room our son will sleep in." I threw the receipts on the bed between us. They fluttered down like dead leaves. His face hardened, the feigned concern replaced by cold resentment. "You don't understand. Things have been difficult lately." "Difficult?" I screeched, the sound ripping from my throat. "You think things have been difficult? I'm growing a human being inside of me. My body is not my own. I can't sleep, I can't eat without feeling sick, my feet are so swollen I can barely walk. I am creating a life for us. And while I'm doing that, you're out screwing some little girl because things are difficult?" "She's not a little girl," he snapped back, his voice rising to match mine. "She's 19. And she gets me. He listens to me. He's fun. When was the last time we had fun, Sarah? Everything is about the baby, the appointments, the budget, what you can and can't eat. I'm suffocating." The word suffocating hung in the air, a stunning, brutal blow. He felt suffocated. By me. By our life. By the child we had planned and prayed for. The rage that had been holding me up seemed to evaporate, leaving behind a hollow, aching void. I looked at this man, this stranger, and I felt nothing but a profound, soul-crushing pity. He wasn't a monster. He was just a coward. A weak, selfish boy trapped in a man's body who couldn't handle the first real responsibility of his life. "Get out," I whispered, the words barely audible. "What?" "Get Out. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a new, colder resolve. Pack a bag and get out of my house. He stared at me, his mouth agape. Sarah, be reasonable. We can talk about this in the morning. You're emotional, you're pregnant. Don't you dare use my pregnancy as an excuse for your disgusting behavior, I said, pointing a trembling finger toward the door. You want fun. You want someone who gets you? Go to her. But you are not staying here tonight. You are not sleeping in this bed. You have contaminated everything. Now get out. I expected him to fight, to argue, to beg. It's what the man I married would have done. But this new Mark, this stranger, just stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled not with remorse, but with a kind of weary annoyance. He turned without another word, walked to the closet, pulled out an overnight bag and started throwing clothes into it with angry, jerky movements. He didn't look at me once. He took his wallet, his keys, and his phone. He walked to the bedroom door, paused for a fraction of a second, and then without a backward glance he left. I stood there, listening to his footsteps fade down the stairs, the front door open, and then the sound of his car starting and driving away into the night. And then there was only silence. He had left. He had actually left. He hadn't fought for us. He hadn't fought for our son. He had chosen the path of least resistance, the path that led straight back to his teenage fantasy. The abandonment was more painful than the infidelity itself. The cheating was a betrayal of our past, but the leaving, that was a betrayal of our future. I collapsed onto the bed, my body racked with sobs so deep and painful I thought they might tear me apart. I was 7 months pregnant and I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The first night was a blur of grief. I don't think I slept. I just drifted in and out of a painful consciousness, my hand permanently attached to my belly, as if I could physically shield my son from the poison that had seeped into our lives. Every creak of the house sounded like Mark returning, ready to apologize, ready to fix this. But the front door remained shut. The silence was his answer. The next morning, the sun streamed into the bedroom with a cruel cheerfulness, illuminating the empty space beside me in the bed, the indentation of his head on the pillow already starting to fade. Reality hit me not with a wave of grief, but with a cold, sharp spear of panic. My job as a freelance graphic designer brought in some money, but Mark's salary as an architect was what paid the mortgage, the car payments, the health insurance. The health insurance. My blood ran cold. My next prenatal appointment was in 3 days. I scrambled out of bed, my movements clumsy with the weight of the baby and the dread coiling in my gut. I found my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. I braced myself, but what I saw was far worse than I could have imagined. The balance, which should have been thousands of dollars, our carefully saved nest egg for the baby, was nearly empty. There was a single massive wire transfer from yesterday afternoon, time-stamped while I was happily painting the nursery. He had drained it. He had planned this. His departure wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made in anger. It was a calculated escape. My breath hitched. I couldn't breathe. The room started to spin, dark spots dancing in my vision. I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. This wasn't just abandonment. It was financial evisceration. He hadn't just left me. He had deliberately crippled me, ensuring I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. How was I supposed to pay the mortgage? The electric bill? How was I supposed to buy diapers, a car seat, food? He had left me pregnant, heartbroken, and destitute. A sharp, cramping pain shot through my lower abdomen so intense it stole the air from my lungs. I cried out, doubling over, my hand flying to the source of the pain. It wasn't the dull ache of Braxton Hicks I'd grown accustomed to. This was a vicious, twisting agony. I looked down at my hands, half expecting to see blood, my mind screaming, no, no, not him. Please, not him. The pain subsided for a moment, leaving me trembling and sweat-soaked. Then another wave hit just as fierce as the first. Panic, pure and unadulterated, took over. I needed to get to the hospital. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I tried to call my mom, who lived 3 states away, but my throat was too tight to speak. I hung up before she could answer, not wanting to send her into a panic until I knew what was happening. My best friend, Jessica, was on a work trip in another country. I was utterly alone. Somehow I managed to call a ride-sharing service. The 5-minute wait for the car felt like an eternity. I grabbed my purse and my hospital go-bag, the one Mark and I had packed together just last week, laughing as we debated which tiny onesie the baby should wear home. The memory was so painful it brought a fresh wave of tears, but the physical agony quickly overshadowed it. The cramps were coming closer together now, a terrifying rhythm of pain and reprieve. The ride to the hospital was a hazy nightmare. I was curled up in the back seat trying to breathe through the contractions, my mind a chaotic swirl of fear. What if I was in labor? It was too early. 7 months was too soon. What if something was wrong with the baby? What if this stress, this heartbreak had somehow harmed him? The guilt was a physical weight crushing me even more than the pain. At the emergency room, the triage nurse took one look at my pregnant belly and my ashen, pain-stricken face and rushed me straight to labor and delivery. They hooked me up to monitors, wrapping tight bands around my belly. The room was filled with the steady, rhythmic whoosh-whoosh of my baby's heartbeat. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard, a tiny anchor in my raging sea of fear. He was still there. His heart was strong. A doctor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Miller, came in and examined me. Her expression was calm but serious. "You're having preterm contractions, Sarah," she explained, her voice gentle. "They're quite strong. We need to try and stop them." The next few hours were a whirlwind of 4 drips and medication. They gave me a shot to help the baby's lungs develop, a terrifying just-in-case measure that made the reality of a premature birth feel suffocatingly real. The medicine they used to stop the contractions made me feel awful, like my heart was racing and my skin was on fire, but I welcomed the discomfort. I would have walked through fire if it meant keeping my son safe. Lying alone in that sterile hospital bed, listening to the beep of the machines and the steady beat of my baby's heart, the full weight of my situation finally settled in. There was no husband to hold my hand. No partner to whisper words of encouragement. When the nurses asked for my emergency contact, the name that came to my lips was the very person who had put me here. The shame was a bitter pill to swallow. I gave them my mother's number instead, but told them not to call unless it was absolutely necessary. Mark didn't call. He didn't text. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth, taking our entire life together with him. He had no idea I was in the hospital. He had no idea his actions had nearly forced his son into the world months before he was ready. And the most painful part? I wasn't sure he would even care if he knew. He was off being fun and young with his teenage girlfriend, while I was here fighting for the life of our child. In that moment, the love I still clung to, the faint, flickering hope of reconciliation, finally died. It was replaced by the cold, hard certainty that I was on my own, and that I had to be strong enough for 2. For 2 days I remained in that hospital bed, a prisoner of beeping machines and my own fearful thoughts. The doctors managed to stop the contractions, but they wanted to keep me for observation. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. In the quiet moments between nurses checking my vitals, the sheer hopelessness of my situation threatened to swallow me whole. I was about to be a single mother with no income, no savings, and a mountain of debt. Mark's betrayal was a wound that had festered, and now it seemed poised to poison my son's future before it even began. My turning point didn't arrive with a lightning bolt of clarity, but in the quiet, compassionate presence of a night nurse named Linda. She was an older woman with kind, crinkly eyes and hands that were surprisingly gentle. She'd seen me crying silently during her rounds on the second night, my face turned toward the window overlooking the dark, empty parking lot. She didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. She simply pulled up a chair, sat beside my bed and said, "The heart on that monitor is the only one that matters right now. You protect that and you'll get through anything." I finally broke down, the whole sordid story pouring out of me. The lies, the teenager, the empty bank account, the crushing weight of the fear. I told her I felt like a failure, that I had brought this disaster upon my own child. Linda listened patiently, her gaze never wavering. When I was finished, my voice raspy from crying, she took my hand. "Let me tell you something," she said, her voice firm but warm. "The day I went into labor with my oldest daughter, my husband was in a jail cell for a DUI. I gave birth alone. I brought her home to an eviction notice on the door. I thought my life was over." He squeezed my hand. "My daughter is 34 now. She's a doctor. In this very hospital, in fact. That boy in there," she said, nodding toward my belly, "he doesn't need a perfect life. He just needs you. And from what I can see, he has a fighter." Her words were like a splash of cold, clean water on my face. Fighter. I hadn't felt like a fighter. I felt broken, defeated. But as I lay there listening to the strong, steady rhythm of my son's heart on the monitor, I realized she was right. All my energy had been spent grieving a man who wasn't worth my tears and a life that was nothing but a lie. I had been mourning the past. But my son was the future. A switch flipped inside me. The all-consuming grief and heartbreak didn't vanish, but they were shoved aside by something far more powerful. A ferocious, primal wave of maternal love. This wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about being a scorned wife. It was about being a mother. Mark had taken my husband, my money, my sense of security. I would not let him take my strength. I would not let his selfishness define my son's life. In that sterile, lonely hospital room, I stopped being a victim. I became a mother bear, and I would burn the world down to protect my cub. The next morning, when Dr. Miller came in with a smile and told me the contractions had stopped completely and that I could go home, I didn't feel the familiar dread. I felt a surge of purpose. I had a battle to fight and I was finally ready. 5:30 to 7 o'clock. Happy ending. The moment I was discharged, I made the phone call I had been dreading. I called my mom, and this time I told her everything. There was no shame, no embarrassment, just the simple, unvarnished truth. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "I'm on the next flight out. We'll handle this together." The relief was so immense it brought me to my knees. I wasn't alone. While I waited for her, I made another call, to a lawyer specializing in family law. I explained the situation, the drained bank account, the abandonment. She was sharp, compassionate, and immediately furious on my behalf. "What he did is called dissipation of assets," she explained calmly. "And it is highly illegal. We'll file an emergency motion. We will get you support. You just focus on staying healthy." For the first time in weeks, a tiny glimmer of hope ignited in my chest. When my mom arrived, she was a whirlwind of loving, maternal efficiency. She filled my fridge, cleaned the house, and held me while I cried out the last of my grief. Together, we transformed the nursery from a place of painful memories into a sanctuary of love and anticipation. We packed away the things that reminded me of Mark and focused on the bright future ahead with my son. 2 months later, my water broke. It was a calm, peaceful evening. My mom drove me to the hospital, holding my hand the whole way. My labor was long and difficult, but I wasn't scared. Every ounce of pain was a step closer to meeting my son. And when he finally arrived, a messy, screaming, perfect little miracle, and they placed him on my chest, the world fell away. He had a full head of dark hair in my eyes. As his tiny fingers curled around mine, I looked at his face and I didn't see a trace of his father. I saw only him. My son. My purpose. I named him Noah, which means rest and comfort, because that's what he had brought back into my life. The pain of the past year, the betrayal, the fear, it all melted away in the overwhelming, unconditional love I felt for this tiny human. My happy ending wasn't about finding a new love or getting revenge. It was about discovering the incredible, unbreakable love I was capable of as a mother. Today Noah is 6 months old. He has the chubbiest cheeks and a laugh that can cure any bad day. My divorce is final. The courts came down hard on Mark for his financial cruelty, and I was awarded the house and enough child support to give us a stable start. I never heard from him directly again, though I heard through the grapevine that his teenage romance fizzled out as soon as real-world consequences and legal demands came into play. It doesn't matter. He is a ghost, a closed chapter in a book I no longer read. My life isn't perfect, but it's real and it's ours. I've built a successful freelance business from home, and I'm stronger and more confident than I have ever been. Sometimes when Noah is asleep on my chest, his little body rising and falling with each breath, I think back to that terrified woman in the hospital. I wish I could tell her that she would make it. That the deepest betrayals often lead to the most profound discoveries about our own strength. That her greatest heartbreak would lead directly to her greatest love. My son didn't just give me a new life, he saved the one I already had. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced a betrayal that brought you to your knees only to find a strength you never knew you possessed, please let us know in the comments. Your story matters and your voice deserves to be heard. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us we are never truly alone.